Israel escalates Hamas offensive. Exposes horrors of Hamas. Kids' bedrooms used to stock weapons. Hamas rockets found in strollers. Search operations continue at Al-Shifa Hospital. Israel war machine rages on. Top focus on 5 Live.
Israel has dropped leaflets ordering Gazans to evacuate particular localities, even in the southern part of the Gaza Strip, including in pockets of Khan Yunis. Now, reports say members of the Israel War Cabinet are in favor of expanding ground operations beyond Gaza City into southern Gaza after total domination, total supremacy at Gaza City in North Gaza and, of course, the Al-Shifa Hospital and areas around it. But the question that's being asked, where will people of Gaza go if Israel expands its operations in South Gaza, especially around Khan Yunis? The situation extremely, extremely alarming along the Gaza Strip. I'm Gaurav Sawant. We get you all details, but first, as always, the headlines. A mega India Today impact a day after India Today's deep dive into dangers of deep fake. Prime Minister Narendra Modi sounds the alarm, calls deep fake the biggest threat to society.
जो भी चैट जीपीटी का उपयोग करता है या कोई इस प्रकार से एआई का उपयोग करता है तो वहां एक आना चाहिए, इट्स अ डीप फेक. फिर उसको देखें, आनंद करें, जो करना है करें, लेकिन उस पर आना चाहिए.
Battle for Madhya Pradesh kicks off. BJP and Congress bigwigs cast their vote. Incumbent Chief Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan says next Chief Minister will be decided by the BJP top brass and voters. Chhattisgarh records over 55% voter turnout as it votes for the remaining 70 seats in Phase 2. Incumbent Chief Minister Bhupesh Baghel expresses confidence of a Congress win. Congress leader Priyanka Gandhi Vadra speaks exclusively to India Today in poll-bound Rajasthan, claims Congress united, but it's the BJP that's divided in Rajasthan.
Pilot Ashok Gehlot, will they fight together? क्या वो एकजुट होकर लड़ेंगे प्रियंका?
होकर लड़ रहे हैं. इस चुनाव में राजस्थान में बीजेपी एकदम बिखरी हुई है.
40 workers trapped for over 150 hours in Uttarkashi tunnel. Rescuers inch closer. Only 30 meters debris left to insert 5 900 mm steel pipes for an escape route. Let me get you the latest from Gaza City and North Gaza. Israeli soldiers have found a tunnel shaft used by Hamas terrorists at Gaza's Al-Shifa Hospital. The Israeli Defense Forces have claimed that a body of an Israeli hostage was also found in the hospital compound. A 65-year-old woman abducted by Hamas terrorists on the 7th of October and murdered in Gaza. Israeli forces have intensified their operations in the Gaza Strip and in the West Bank with raids at the Ibn Sina Hospital after an IDF soldier was killed in a terror strike. All 3 suspected terrorists have also been killed. Israeli forces have dropped leaflets in the Khan Yunis area of southern Gaza asking people to evacuate immediately. Does this indicate a major expansion of ground operations beyond Gaza City towards southern Gaza? That's our top story.
Hamas terror network linked to Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City stands exposed. Israeli troops are searching rooms and basement of Gaza's biggest hospital after days-long siege that caused global alarm over the fate of thousands of civilians trapped inside. Hamas's tunneling infrastructure inside the hospital is now revealed. The Israeli forces also seized a vehicle containing weapons and ammunition that was to be used in October's 7th massacre.
IDF forces found a tunnel shaft in Shifa Hospital. Engineering forces are currently uncovering the infrastructure there. We also found a vehicle that has been prepared for the massacre on the October 7 and didn't leave. And we found many weapons in it. I want to emphasize a car of Hamas terrorists with many weapons within the ground of Shifa Hospital.
Al-Shifa Hospital has become the main target of the ground operation by Israeli forces, who claim Hamas fighters ran their operations from headquarters in tunnels beneath it. Hamas has denied the charge.
After 20 hours of attacking all the hospital facilities, searching and tampering with all the contents and departments, the spokesperson of the occupation army came out as usual with a weak and ridiculous story, saying that he had found several rifles, a Kalashnikov, a laptop, a military uniform and an old pair of shoes which he displayed on the shelves, and moved from one place to another and appearing in front of journalists as if he has displaying his goods in a supermarket or in a hotel room.
Israel says its troops uncovered weapons and terror infrastructure inside the hospital compound after killing fighters in clashes outside. There was no fighting or friction with civilians, patients or staff inside the hospital, according to the IDF. Israel also claims to have found the body of Yehudi Twiz, one of around 240 hostages taken by Hamas gunmen when they stormed southern Israel on October 7. The body was recovered by troops in a building near the Al-Shifa Hospital. Even as Israeli Defense Forces mount operations inside the Al-Shifa and other hospitals in the locality, civilians who have taken shelter in these facilities are demanding a ceasefire. Bureau Report, India Today.
Israeli Defense Forces say brick by brick, tunnel by tunnel, hospital by hospital, they are dismantling the Hamas terror infrastructure, military terror infrastructure in North Gaza and in Gaza City. The indication are soon they will expand south of Wadi Gaza River. They intend targeting Khan Yunis. Israeli forces say that Hamas terrorists were using not just the Al-Shifa Hospital as its command and control center, but also other hospitals, including the Al-Rantisi Children's Hospital, as a weapons storage facility, as a rocket launch facility, and as barracks for Hamas terrorists. The IDF claims they've neutralized several Hamas terrorists who are hiding inside a school, and several weapons and systems have been recovered, thereby making a case for expansion of operations beyond Gaza City.
Israel Defense Forces continue to uncover the horrors of Hamas hidden beneath the 3 largest hospitals in Gaza. A tunnel under the Al-Shifa Hospital complex. Weapons and ammunition recovered inside Al-Quds Hospital. And yet another tunnel under the Rantisi Hospital. In fact, the Rantisi Children's Hospital has been used by Hamas terrorists to hide arms and possibly hold hostages. A 6-minute video released by the IDF shows the house of a Hamas terrorist right next to the hospital.
I'm here in Gaza City. We are here next to a house of a terrorist. This is one of the senior terrorists who is the head of the operational naval operations that led the raids into Israel. His house is 200 yards from the hospital of Rantisi. Next to his house, there is a tunnel. Now I want to show you an operational tunnel. The tunnel is built with electricity, a door that is bulletproof, it's explosives proof, so it looks like a hard evidence, a clear evidence that the hospital direction is connected. It's part of the same floor and it slides down here. So it's a covered tunnel so nobody can find it.
The tunnel under Rantisi Hospital led the IDF to an operational base.
There is a list. This is the back side of the hospital. Hamas used this hospital. Tonight we have entered into this building. I will show you the evidence. Let's enter into the hospital. We are now in the area of the basement of the hospital. I want to show you a room where we found all the gear, the operational gear of Hamas. Hamas is using hospitals, like we showed the evidence in Al-Shifa Hospital. In other hospitals, we are now seeing it in live in Rantisi Hospital. Among hospitals, among patients, we have hand grenades, Kalashnikovs, and then we have the RPGs. People shooting RPGs from hospitals. This is Hamas, firing RPGs for hospitals. The world has to understand who is Israel fighting against. We are now in the basement, and in this basement we found a motorcycle. They were all used in the massacre of the 7th of October.
Israel says that some hostages were also kept under the Rantisi hospital.
Yards from here, we find the chair, a woman, clothes, and a rope. A rope next to the legs. Look above it. It's a baby bottle. This is a suspicion for an area where hostages were being held. We're now looking at an infrastructure. You don't need to build something improvisedly in a hospital in the basement. We can see this area is a closed area from the rest of the hospital. We can see the ventilation air that was done improvisedly to this area. And we can see infrastructures that was built in here, toilets, shower, a small kitchen, will provide the terrorists their needs. This list says we are in an operation. The operation against Israel started in the 7th of October. This is a Guardian list where every terrorist writes his name and every terrorist has his own shift guarding the people that were here.
Hospitals or Hamas terror hideouts. The truth is slowly emerging for the world to see.
And this is where they choose to hide everything.
Bureau Report, India Today.
So there are reports that leaflets have been dropped over Khan Yunus in southern Gaza Strip. Are we looking at an expansion of operations, ground operations in southern Gaza next? I quickly want to cut across to a man on the ground. Rajesh Pawar joins us for more from Sderot in southern Israel. Rajesh, there are reports that seem to indicate that Yoav Gallant, the Minister of Defense, and also Benny Gantz, both in the war cabinet, are in favor of expansion of ground operations to south. Is that what is likely to happen in the days and weeks ahead? And what does that mean for the hostage crisis?
Look, Gaurav, this is very clear. Now the Israeli plan is very clear. Now they have completely demolished every target of Hamas in north of Gaza. And after this, now their focus will be south of Gaza. But the biggest challenge in this will be the transfer of population. Now you see that all the people, civilians from North Gaza were evacuated to south of Gaza. Now the entire populations will have to be shifted back again in north of Gaza, where there is no civilian infrastructure anymore. Besides this, there are reports that yesterday IDF has bombed targets of Iranian proxies in Syria near Damascus. So these are indications that first IDF will take care of south of Gaza, and after that they will be moving north for taking care of Hezbollah. This seems to be the plan of IDF as of now, Gaurav.
Okay, and overall, when you're looking at situation on ground, especially with the kind of evidence that Admiral Hagari seems to have put out, as Colonel Jonathan Connicus seems to have put out of what they claim was a command and control center of Hamas at the Al-Shifa and also at Al-Rantisi. What's the buzz on ground? Is this evidence that will hold in a court of law, or does it convince people that this hospital was actually a Hamas command and control center?
Look, Gaurav, even the Americans have confirmed that there was Hamas command and control center under the hospital, this Al-Shifa Hospital. Most of the civilians here, the Israeli civilians, believe that to be true, and Israelis are going in a very systematic way as far as collection of evidence is concerned, documenting the evidence is concerned. They are going in a very systematic way, and I think if it goes to a court of law sometime later in International Criminal Court, I think they will stand the case because they are doing it in a very systematic way, and all the evidence is being collected right now, including DNA samples and the kind of weapons which are used on civilian cars. Gaurav.
So DNA samples are being collected, samples of those who were taken hostage from southern Israel and held hostage at Al-Shifa, including the body of a 65-year-old woman whose body was found at the Al-Shifa Hospital. All of this is evidence that Israel is putting together. Stay with me, Rajesh. I also want to expand the scope of the story. The question now is the stage set for expansion of operations towards southern Gaza, including Khan Yunis area, where leaflets have now been dropped asking people, ordering people to vacate some localities where Israel says it will target Hamas strongholds it has intelligence about. There are also growing calls for a ceasefire and international investigations into alleged war crimes by Israel. Joining me now on this special broadcast is Joshua Hunman, a strategist and advisor to the hostage families and also former advisor to the Minister of Defense. Mr. Hunman, there are reports that leaflets have been dropped over Khan Yunis asking people to evacuate. What does this indicate and what does this mean for the hostage crisis?
Well, thank you very much for having me. And let's remember how this all began. This all began with the greatest terror attack and the greatest massacre of the Jewish people since World War II, since the Holocaust on October the 7th. Since then, over 240 hostages have been held, civilians, men, women, children, the elderly, babies. In fact, another baby was born in captivity just this week, held in Gaza, held in the terror tunnels. And the IDF and the government of Israel, they have a responsibility, in fact, they have a duty to bring those hostages home and to do everything they can in their power to bring those babies and those children and those grandparents back to their families. Furthermore, they have a duty to dismantle the terror infrastructure of Hamas, because Hamas have said very clearly that October the 7th is just the beginning. Their leaders have said that they want to do this over and over again. And therefore, we have a duty to defeat Hamas in its entirety and to rid both Israel and the Palestinian civilian population of this despicable evil.
But Joshua Hunman, I want to understand from you, if there is an expansion of these operations towards southern Gaza in areas like Khan Yunis, will this adversely impact the release of hostages? There are reports that talks are in an advanced stage for release of between 50 to 70 Israeli hostages in return for 50 to 70 or maybe 100 Palestinian hostages in Israeli prison and perhaps 3 to 5 days of ceasefire.
So I think we have to understand there's always this parallel track going on. Of course, the diplomacy is going on behind closed doors. That has been widely reported. And it appears that they are working on a deal with the international community, with many interlocutors, in order to bring home as many of these hostages as soon as possible back to their families. Again, there are 3-year-old children there, 5-year-old children, babies. We need to bring them home. So that is one track. The other track is, of course, the military track. And whilst this really is unprecedented to have a democracy chasing after a jihadist organization which has captured and kidnapped over 240 members of its public, the military operation must continue. It must continue, and there have already been successes. Even on the first week of the operation, one of the hostages was found and saved and brought back to her family. So this parallel track of the diplomatic and the military must continue in order to bring the hostages back to their families.
Okay. There are reports that suggest that members of the Israeli war cabinet, they're in favor of expansion of operations to the southern parts of Gaza. Is the entire country on the same page on this? Will this help rescue the hostages, or will this delay that even further?
Look, Israel is like India. It's a vibrant democracy with many, many children hiding beneath their hospitals, hiding beneath their mosques and schools, and have chosen to hide underground. If they have now moved to the south of the Gaza Strip, then the IDF has a duty to pursue them, kill them, and restore peace and security, not just to the south of Israel, but also to the Palestinian people.
I want to understand from you, and since you've been advisor to the Minister of Defense, how could Hamas, under the nose of Mossad, the Shin Bet, or all of Israel's agencies, build this complex spider web of tunnels over a period of time? I mean, what were Israeli intelligence agencies doing all along that 1,300 odd tunnels, about 500 kilometers length and breadth of tunnels could come up in the Gaza Strip, that narrow Gaza Strip?
So we must understand, Israel left the Gaza Strip in 2006. Okay, we left the international community, but pressure on Israel to remove its communities, to remove its army bases. And what came in place was a terror regime. Hamas won an election, then kicked out, shot and pushed their opposition off buildings. They turned it into a totalitarian, autocratic, theocratic Islamist enclave, and they turned the entire Gaza Strip into this terror base. Now, there have been many rounds of violence, as of course you have reported, and during those rounds of violence, Israeli intelligence has managed to put their hands on some of these terror tunnels, and indeed many of them have been destroyed. But when Israel left the Gaza Strip as a gesture of peace, they weren't expecting the Hamas regime and the Palestinians to turn this entire strip into a terror base. And now we are facing the consequences, and we have to deal with those consequences and remove this terror threat, both for the sake of Israeli civilians and indeed the Palestinian civilians. Because if we do not win this, if we do not deal with this threat now, then we will be speaking again in 6 months, in a year, with the same pictures on our screens, as Hamas have committed and said very loudly and clearly that they want to maintain this state of war, and they want to carry these acts out over and over again.
I want to understand from you. Israel stands accused of using a communication blackout as a weapon of war in the Gaza Strip. Internet down, communications cut off. Is this to force Hamas to release hostages?
Look, Israel is the only country in the history of warfare that, while fighting its enemies, actually sends over trucks of fuel and water and food and clothes, and actively encourages the international community to come in and build field hospitals in order to care for the humanitarian needs of the population. Israel is fighting a very, very difficult and complex war with a cynical and evil terrorist organization, which is doing its utmost to increase civilian damage, civilian deaths on both sides. Israel, I think, it's unprecedented what this country has done in order to protect
But it's not
civilians.
just a communication blackout. It's not just a communication blackout. Look at reports that emerge from the Gaza Strip. There's shortage of food, there's no water, there's shortage of fuel, there's a shortage of medicines, and it's almost as if Gazans are being starved, forced to their knees so that Hamas releases hostages. Will this strategy work given this global criticism, rising global criticism that's coming Israel's way, Joshua?
There's one address for that criticism, and that address is Hamas, because not only did they start this brutal war that we didn't want, okay, on 6th of October, we had a ceasefire. They started this war, and they have also been stealing the food and stealing the fuel. How are they continuing to fire rockets at Israel without fuel? Clearly there is fuel in the Gaza Strip because they're still firing rockets at Israel. How are there thousands of fighters living underground? They have food, they have water, but once again, it's an example of Hamas protecting themselves, protecting their terrorists, while completely ignoring the basic needs of their own civilian population. And it's yet another reason why they must be defeated.
You know, is Israel willing to consider a pause, a tactical pause or a ceasefire if hostages are returned? Or is the country on one page that Hamas and its enablers have to be finished first, hostages can return later?
So Israel has already implemented humanitarian pauses. There was a request from the international community, in particular from the Americans, and there were international pauses being implemented for a few hours a day in order to help vacate some of the civilian population from the north to parts of the areas in the south, and in order to save as many innocent Palestinian civilians as possible. You must understand, these scenes are heart-wrenching and heartbreaking for us as well. No one in Israel wanted this. We had a ceasefire on the 6th of October, but we are not going to agree to another ceasefire, which will just allow the Hamas regime and the Hamas terror operation to just rebuild, rearm, and get ready for their next round of jihadist violence and kidnappings and rape, butchering, murder, and beheadings. We simply will not allow that.
Because the Palestinian Red Crescent Society say that Israel, and Israel's now punishing the people of Palestine. It's not just restricted to the Gaza Strip. Take, for example, what's happening at the West Bank. The ambulance staff are being detained. Their staff are being prevented from reaching out to the injured, even in the West Bank.
So first of all, let's be clear that on the 7th of October, we had our ambulances shot at on both sides of this. And I think that the democratic countries in the world who are facing this terror threat, like India, like the US, France, and the UK, understand very well what Israel is facing. They are backing Israel. And I believe that Israel will get the support of the enlightened nations in their fight against this Islamic extremist terrorism and in their fight towards freedom, so that lightness can indeed defeat the darkness and we can move towards a future of brotherhood and sisterhood and peace in our region when the forces of darkness are finally defeated.
So for these forces of darkness to be defeated, before I let you go, I want to understand this. If this war is being expanded towards the south, beyond Wadi Gaza, into southern Gaza Strip, where do those people go? They're anywhere out in the open. They're cramped and millions are living in the open, as we are being told. Where will those people go if the war is expanded to the south?
So that's exactly what the flyers and the text messages and the phone calls are for. Again, I don't know the specific details and I can't get into operational intricacies because I'm just not made aware of them. But the leaflets and the text messages and the phone calls tell people where to go. Okay, there are safe spaces. There's lots of open land. There are field hospitals being set up. There are safe spaces, which unfortunately Hamas have been taking advantage of up until now. Again, their cynical, evil warfare, whereby they go where the civilians go to protect themselves. Quite the opposite of how normal armies work, that try and protect their civilians. They hide behind their civilians. So I would urge, and I would urge in every language for Palestinian civilians to heed the warnings that are being sent to them by the Ministry of Defense and the IDF. And I would urge Hamas to stop being cowards in their tunnels and to come out and fight, because they started this fight and they must be finished so that both sides can move on towards a future of peace and security.
Joshua Hunman for joining me here on this India Today special broadcast. Many thanks.
"40 workers trapped for over 120 hours. Rescue teams execute Plan B. New drilling machines get going. Rescuers inch closer to workers. Tunnel horror to end soon.
It's prayers for it's 150 hours and counting. The effort is to get those 40 workers out as quickly as possible. This is day 6 of rescue operations in the Uttarkashi tunnel. 40 workers still trapped in the debris. On Friday, rescue workers deployed this advanced auger drilling machine to escalate the process. They were successful. They successfully inserted 5 pipes inside the tunnel. What we are being told right now is just about 30 to 40 meters distance, 30 to 40 meters of debris that needs to be cleared. India Today's Ashutosh Mishra, a man on ground, he's been getting us the latest report and he's sent us this report.
6 days and counting. Over 150 hours and 40 workers remain trapped in a tunnel in Uttarkashi. Advanced auger drilling machines deployed. Police rescue teams conducting mock drills. And trapped workers still holding on to hope. As the rescue operations in Uttarkashi's Silkyara tunnel continue, the rescuers have made significant headway overnight in the ongoing operation to free 40 trapped workers. On Friday, rescue teams inserted 5 pipes, each with a diameter of 900 millimeters and a length of 6 meters, into the debris. Officials have informed that a further 30 to 40 meters of debris has to be cleared to reach the trapped workers.
टेक्निकल मिशन है। अंदर जो डेब्रीज है उसके अंदर कुछ भी हो सकता है, स्टील रिप्स भी हो सकती है, रॉक बोल्ट्स हो सकते हैं, कोई मशीन हो सकती है, कोई बूमर हो सकता है। तो उसको लेके मैं टाइमलाइन आपको नहीं बता सकता, बट ये बोल सकता हूँ कि एक एक मिनट सब कुछ इम्पोर्टेंट, एक एक सेकंड इम्पोर्टेंट है और मुख्यमंत्री जी भी इस पे निरंतर अपडेट ले रहे हैं, पल पल की अपडेट ले रहे हैं। तो ऑपरेशन जो है पूरी तरीके से जारी है।
On Friday, rescue workers also conducted a mock drill to pull out the trapped workers out of the debris. During this mock drill, a rescue worker goes inside the pipe along with a rope. Other workers hold the rope while the worker goes inside to pull out those stranded. The trapped workers will be pulled out one after another and then taken on a stretcher.
Let us tell you that auger drilling machine is using its full capacity. It's a 25-ton machine which is regularly working day and night, and more than 260 personnel are also involved in the rescue operations.
Communication meanwhile continues with the trapped workers to monitor their mental health and ensure they don't lose hope. With Ashutosh Mishra and Ankit Sharma in Uttarkashi, Bureau Report, India Today.
So it's a race against time as far as these workers are concerned to rescue them. Technical teams are on the job. We are now being told that there's a technical fault that's been found in this auger machine. Some problem created by debris falling that's delayed some operations. I quickly want to cut across to India Today's Ashutosh Mishra. He's been standing by, getting us all the latest reports. Ashutosh, is it hoping against hope, or workers are working constantly? What's the latest? How quickly will this 30-meter gap be covered?
Well, Gaurav, no agencies are able to give any timeline or a time frame, and it is really very disappointing. The rescue operation enters 6th day, and even there is no scope about any time frame. It has been more than 3 hours now. There is no rescue operation underway at the moment, and the reason is the technical issues, the physical issues that the rescue team is facing with the new auger machine. Even while the 5th pipe, which was on the alignment and which was ready to be penetrated inside the debris, the bearing with this new auger machine is also creating a hurdle. Subsequently, the alignment issues are also obstructing. Moreover, because of the equilibrium and the vibration that machine is creating because of constant working, this also, at around 3:30, there were a huge amount of debris that also fell down. In fact, if the tunnel right side, the structure, if it's too dark, it won't be able to see many things. But because of the structure, since the debris are constantly falling, when workers were so afraid, they stepped out. Once again, the operation that was started again to carry out the rescue operation. But because of these issues that the agencies are facing, another machine has been airlifted from Indore that has arrived Dehradun, and by late evening it will be somehow the agencies are trying to fix it and align it, assemble it, and then start rescue operation once again. So clearly at least another 12 hours going to be very critical. There will be no operation for now, and yet again after all the assembling and alignment, they will continue tomorrow. This will be 7th day, and again, of course, this also raises the anxiety, concern, apprehensions, multiple things. The agencies are only trying their best, and that's the only one can hope and also pray for the safety of all those 40 trapped workers.
What more do we know, Ashutosh, about the condition of those inside? How often are people outside able to communicate with them? What about their food, water, medicines? What more can you tell us?
With a very narrow pipe through the machines, they are being supplied food, water and the oxygen, which is the very essential. Subsequently, also medicines and supplements as with the consultation of the medical team. As far as conversation, as far as communication is concerned, the only few inches of the pipe is the only source, and that's a 60-meter tall from one end to another. So the communication and the words that are very essential, you cannot really have a long talk through those 60-meter long pipes. So again, but yes, since it raises anxiety, of course, because these machines are not working at the moment, probably it is also affecting the psychological condition. But the rescue team and the operation, because they have been part of a team working on this project here in the mountains, so they know how to help each other. At the moment, the need is to keep their morale high and the hope alive that everything will be fine sooner than later. This operation will be successful and they will be evacuated. So at the moment, the only thing that they have is the hope and the courage, and which is again totally running at the moment when there is a race against time for these 40 workers and the rescue team, Gaurav.
what's the temperature where you are and what's the temperature where these people are? How are our doctors in touch with them? Are doctors communicating with them at least sometimes, if not often?
Once a day there is a communication as far as medical health is concerned, because every time rescue team speaks to them, they ask, is there any condition, medical condition they require medicines. If there are some messages, some kind of medical supplements are being given. But for now, no one has complained about severe ill condition. They are mentally very strong, they are physically very strong because of the constant communication. Outside the temperature goes as low as 7-8 degrees in the night, but here in the tunnel, because it is totally blocked by the 60-meter debris and even other side, so there is no cross ventilation, there is no air. So relatively the temperature in the tunnel at that particular portion is quite warmer than outside. So that's one factor very helpful at the moment with those workers, because inside the tunnel you do not really carry so much warm clothes. But for now the temperature being warmer is only factor that is also helping them.
Ashutosh, keep tracking that story. I will come back to you for more on this. In fact, what we can also tell our viewers, that special teams from Thailand, they've been roped in, and these were teams that had worked to help save the children who were stuck in the cave in Thailand in 2018. Now, these teams have been roped in to join the rescue effort. Their expertise has been sought, and that may actually help boost this rescue process in Uttarkashi.
Every second counts in the race against time to rescue 40 workers trapped inside the Uttarkashi tunnel that caved in on November 12. The authorities are bringing in international organizations for expert advice and to speed up the rescue mission. Special teams from Thailand, including the one that had helped save the children stuck in a cave there in 2018, have been roped in to help the rescue efforts. The Thailand cave rescue was one of the most difficult rescue missions and was tracked across the world. 12 members of a rescue team aged 11 to 16 and their 25-year-old assistant coach had entered the cave on 23rd June after a practice session. Shortly after they entered, heavy rainfall began and partially flooded the cave system, blocking their way out and trapping them. Efforts to locate the group were hampered by rising water levels and strong currents. They were out of contact for more than a week. Two rescue divers sensed the boys were breathing from their exhaust bubbles, which they could see and feel. Rescue organizers discussed various methods to rescue the victims, including teaching them basic diving skills. After days of pumping water from the cave system and respite from rain, the rescue teams got the group out of the cave. A similar rescue operation was carried out in the partially flooded El Pizard cave in Mexico. The rescue occurred in March 2004 after 6 British soldiers were trapped inside. They were rescued after 8 days by British cave divers. Divers from the Cave Rescue Organization assisted the soldiers one at a time as they exited the cave. The victims were in contact with their colleagues who originally had 10 days supply of food as well as lighting and sleeping bags. While the situation in Uttarkashi may be different from Thailand and Mexico, the expertise of teams from abroad will be valuable in speeding up the rescue mission. Bureau Report, India Today.
Many deep fake and AI-generated videos are taking the internet by storm, and that's left netizens divided. Prime Minister Narendra Modi actually described a deep fake, and he's described these deep fakes, including one that shows him perform a garba, as a threat to the Indian democratic system. He spoke of the menace of deep fakes as they continue to grow. The Prime Minister was speaking to journalists earlier today. We bring you this report.
In an election season, Virat Kohli's picture being replaced by a politician there you go. You now have a picture of Virat Kohli sitting and working in our newsroom.
India Today's deep dive into digital sorcery. A journey into the realm of deception.
And put words in his mouth.
Our in-house experts took center stage on Thursday, revealing the dark arts of deepfakes. We exposed how faces can be swapped, voices mimicked, and reality manipulated with a few clicks.
This free and customizable tool can be used and accessed by any developer in the world.
I will just sit in front of computer and the software is going to look at me and describe what I'm doing in that language, tone and voice of none other than David Attenborough.
The image depicts a man sitting inside a room concentrating on reading a book with an orange and white cover. The man is wearing glasses and has a neatly groomed mustache. He is dressed in a dark jacket over a lighter shirt. The room's background appears simple, with plain walls and no discernible decorations.
ChatGPT के लोग मिले थे तो मैंने उनको कहा था.
A day later, Prime Minister Narendra Modi sounded the alarm. The Prime Minister described deepfakes as a potential threat to the Indian system.
जैसे सिगरेट पे आता है, इट्स कैंसरस. पीना तुम्हारी मर्जी, लेकिन लिखा हुआ रहता है. ये हेल्थ के लिए हैजार्ड है, ऐसा लिखा हुआ है. जो भी चैट जीपीटी का उपयोग करता है या कोई इस प्रकार से एआई का उपयोग करता है, तो वहां एक आना चाहिए, इट्स अ डीप फेक. फिर उसको देखें, आनंद करें, जो करना है करें, लेकिन उस पर आना चाहिए.
The Prime Minister called upon both citizens and the media to stay vigilant against the misuse of artificial intelligence for deepfakes. The Prime Minister even cited a video purportedly featuring him performing Garba, a seemingly real moment that turned out to be a meticulously crafted illusion. The man in the viral video was not Prime Minister Modi, but a doppelganger. Actor Vikas Mahante participating at a Diwali event in London.
इनमें से किस मुख्यमंत्री को उनकी झूठी घोषणाओं के कारण घोषणा मशीन कहा जाता है?
As the menace of deepfakes continues to grow, the Prime Minister's call for vigilance underscores the importance of staying one step ahead of the illusions that threaten Indian democracy.
सबको 1500 रुपए महीने और 5
Bureau Report, India Today.
फिर इस बार तो छोड़ो, अगली बार भी हमारा जीतना नामुमकिन हो जाएगा.